Welcome to Sikorski's Think Abouts, and I'm your host, Laura Sikorski. My guests and I share our operations and technology expertise to help you provide outstanding customer service and customer experiences. So today our guest is Katherine Leo, and she is the Marketing Executive Assistant for Blue Chip Marketing, where we film our show at the Daily Blue. And it was quite fun. I said, I've never had a show where I could talk to a call center agent. And I said, does anybody here ever work in a call center? And Kat goes, me, I did. And
I thought she was just going to ask me questions.
And I said, well, guess who's going to be on the show? And it was interesting to find out, Kat, that you worked for Reliance Oil here on Long Island, and you did outbound telemarketing.
Yeah.
So that's a different sense.
Oh, yeah.
And then you also worked for Computer Associates, and you looked at inbound queues and from, people, associates within the company and solve problems and so forth. So what, I did have mystery guest, so she is our mystery guest today. So Kat, I really have always felt this, that employees are a company's greatest asset. So I'd like you to describe way back when, a day in the life of a call center agent. So, and you can kind of bring in both companies that you worked for.
Well, they were very much different. So there was and again, this was years ago. I was younger probably than 19 when I worked at the first call center to see where it was when I was,
So you're 90 years old is what you're saying?
Yes.
She's still young.
I'm still young, but this was a long time ago, and I've had, I was able to see the differences between how even employees are allowed to interact with management.
Right.
So that was a big thing. They were off in a corner, no one's allowed to talk to them. Only, this one person can talk to management. We were little peons. That's how I felt.
Wow.
That's how I felt. And I know that we weren't allowed to go over there. It was just weird. But then when I was in Computer Associates, it was a totally different animal. Right. I was in charge of all the 11 honchos. And I was the one that was going to all of them.
And
so it was interesting to see.
So you basically saw life as a call center agent from two totally different perspectives. One where you really didn't have a say in how you did your work, and the other one where you were more of a lead supervisor and could delegate and so forth.
Right.
So let's talk about Reliance Oil a little bit, and we're not bad-mouthing Reliance Oil, please.
It was just a different time.
It was a different time, a different way of doing business. But what was the office environment like?
Loud. I remember being loud. Very strenuous. It was if you weren't on the phone, you were in trouble.
Oh, wow.
You had to make a certain amount of calls per day, so people would just dial and hang up, and if you didn't have a certain amount of time, then you'd get in trouble. So it was a lot of...
So it was really a big
very structured.
Very structured. And outbound call center work is in fact very stressful because, today there's a lot of auto dialing that happens. We all know what that is. When we get home, we got all these hang-ups, right? And you know that somebody was trying to reach you from an outbound telemarketing.
And I didn't like calling people in the middle of dinner. It really bothered me.
Oh.
But it was what we had to do to make money so you can have a job.
Yeah, and you knew that they were going to be home at that particular time. I know, and that goes back to the very beginning of outbound telemarketing and why they suddenly developed the do not call registry, that you can't call, you cannot call on us using somebody's cell phone today, because you could be fined almost, I think it's $1,000 per call to it without an okay from a cell phone user. So that was very, very difficult. Now, what about your desk area?
Oh, it's very tight. Barely could fit in it. There was a phone and a phone book and your chair. That was it.
Wow.
It was just very, very tight. I remember being nowadays the cubicles have advanced.
Right.
They could be these lavish offices, if you will, even through a cubicle, but this cubicle was very tight, and there was rows and rows of people, and we had an upstairs, we had downstairs, and we had a back, and then, we were constantly watched.
Constantly watched.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Everybody knew what somebody was doing because of the way it was set up. Which again,
but how did that make you feel? I mean, what kind of emotions did you have in that day? You didn't like it.
I liked being around the people. You know, I liked being interactive with them. Breaks were awesome because we all got to go outside and just take a minute for a little, you know, and then come back in. But it was a very, and at that time I didn't realize like how stressful that was. And when people asked me to reflect back on that, I'm like, I feel that, you know, like it was very like,
Well, I would hope today that most call centers, you know, are not as tight you know, and tight in cubicles and stuff. But I can tell you there are some that are still in that kind of boiler room mentality, and especially in the outbound field. You know, I'm not criticizing the outbounders out there, but there are times when you really need to take a deep breath, and perhaps management needs to go and sit on the floor, work and do some of those outbound, those out dials, because you're always intruding. You know, and I found that that's one of the biggest things. When I was a call center agent, I was on the inbound side. So I was always very happy. I had happy calls. I worked for a limousine company, you know. So
it was a happy calls.
It was a happy calls. You know, they were booking a wedding or, you know, they were going on vacation. And so they were really just very nice, you know, to you. And developed, I was part of the training, you know, for them as well as career went ahead. But I remember I loved it. You know?
Like I can remember one call, I called up and I said, do you heat your home with oil? They're like, no, we take our furniture, we break it up, we light it up on fire in the living room.
Oh, well, that's sweet.
You have a great night. You know, like you always have to be pleasant, and didn't realize at the time how much it beats you down. You know, and you're always getting rejected, you're always hearing the no, and it's just, and that's why I'm glad that I was able to go to the inbound.
Go to the inbound side. And you know, this is for you know, customers out there. Remember that when somebody is making an outbound call to you, they are a human being, and you know, they're doing their job, and they really feel bad if you know, but they're, you know, to pressure you into a sale, let's say. But you know, you have to kind of do rejection a little bit kinder. You know, say, I'm really sorry to have bothered you. I will take you off our list. You know, those are some of the things that we can do for those outbound call center agents. Now, on the inbound queue, now that was very interesting for me because that really hasn't taken off years ago. I mean, today, inbound emails, inbound chats to the contact center are very real. And they're automatically routed. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, that inbound queue, and that now working for Computer Associates, and that's a fairly large company that was here on Long Island. So let's talk about that for a bit.
I was an HR generalist at Computer Associates, and I was in charge of like the reporting and the, you know, all of the different VPs. So I basically had 11 bosses.
Whoa.
Major. So it's like delegating and understanding who's more important. Like it was a lot of stress, but it was different pressure. But then I would get a queue, and I would go in, and then I would look. I say, okay, is this something I can handle?
So give me an example of the, you know, a type of queue.
It could be anything because it was an inbound place where employees could just write, you know, and talk to HR. So
I gotcha.
Yeah, so that was anything between, you know, benefits.
Okay, so this was like an internal hotline for employees that they could do an email, and then you would find of the 11 who was most skilled to answer that type of call or in type of email or question. Well, we have to take a break. I can't believe we're at a 10-minute mark already. So we will be back, and we will continue talking to Kat on the day of a life in a call center agent.
Hi, I'm Tim Stead. I'm from Star Communications. We're a marketing support company. And if you need help with your next marketing project, please call 273-1900, or you can go to our website, starcommunications.us.
Well, welcome back to Sikorski's Think Abouts, and I'm your host, Laura Sikorski, and with me is Katherine Leo, who is the marketing executive assistant for Blue Chip Marketing here at the Daily Blue. And we were talking about her former life, where she did work as an outbound call center agent and an inbound kind of email receipt person. And even today, we were just talking and how she feels that even when she walks in the mall,
Right.
and somebody is making eye contact with her from the kiosk, those days of being rejected when you called on an outbound call just come back to you, and knowing the importance of selling. She really is very kind to people.
I am. I acknowledge them. Because if you make the eye contact, with those types of salespeople, they think that they have you. So I'll just be like, look, I acknowledge you. I know you have a hard job. I'm not interested, but I see you, almost like you matter.
Right,
like
you matter.
Like I don't want to just not make eye contact with them because I know how it feels. So even if I just look at them and I smile, I know that made their day.
Right.
It changed it a little bit.
Just that little
Just a
bit
little
extra.
bit.
So even when that outbound telemarketer who is not supposed to call you during your dinner times, acknowledge them. They have a job to do, and just be kind. But if you could, when you were both inbound and then and outbound, what do you wish you could have done?
There were times where I knew that people couldn't afford what we were offering, but you had to do that whole pitch.
Right.
And I just wish I could have just said, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
Right.
Move on.
Right.
But everybody was listening, everything was recorded, and you had to go through. If you didn't, you were in trouble. So it was part of your job.
Right.
And then they would say, well, you don't know if, and you could just tell if somebody really couldn't.
Yeah, they couldn't afford.
They're COD. Why? Because that's how they live their life,
Yeah.
But I mean, it was hard because even with the inbound, there were times that I wish I could just hug somebody because they're going through a hard thing. Like one girl was almost getting fired because they were trying to regulate her medication. So it's like, she just needed a hug. She's like, I need somebody to understand that I'm going through this and not just,
And so empathy has always been a really big thing in a call center because you have to understand the person on the other end of the phone and empathize with them as best as you can to help them through a situation. Just let's kind of recap a little bit. I've always thought, what makes a happy agent, and we didn't talk about any training or coaching or product knowledge in both types of job. Did you get it?
With the first one, it was very minimal. They didn't really teach you how to handle rejection at the time.
Okay.
I think it would be different now. I think that more people are
customer
service savvy, and I this was not when I'm ancient, but this was a long time ago.
Well, but
over 20 years.
I just wrote an article for the coming International Customer Management Institute, and it's tips on how to make an agent have an agent handle a rude customer. So it still exists today, and that I guess that's something that'll never go away.
Right.
But I think working in a call center kind of prepares you for what's out there. It really is kind of a weird thing to say, but you're on the front line and you're constantly challenged on what you need to say, how you need to say it. Yes, some people inbound and outbound look at numbers and grade you based on numbers, but they forget you're a human being and shouldn't be Big Brother watching. I also think that an agent needs to know where their career paths are.
Right.
Because many times in a call center, you can move up.
That's what I did at Computer Associates. I was actually in charge of helping the employees know where their path was. So that was fun.
Yeah.
It was a lot of different things that I could do.
You had a lot of opportunities.
Human resources.
Yeah. So you could take a look. I know one of the companies I worked for, an auto place, and you had to work in the call center to move up in the company. So you would go, you would have to work and then you would go to be a supervisor, let's say somewhere else within another department. But if you wanted to get a promotion, you had to come back to the call center, work in a different area. It was all about understanding the customer and understanding the frustrations that they went through. And so, that career pathing and mentoring is extremely important in a call center.
Absolutely.
And I think what makes an agent happy is genuine appreciation for a
Absolutely.
job well done. I mean, I know sometimes when I was acting directors in a lot of call centers, companies that I work for, I always made a point of walking the floor and saying, hey, you know, that was a great call. You did a great job. So be kind to your call center
Yes.
agents, you know. So coaching.
Mhm.
Did you get coaching, or, you know, can you...
Over the years I have, but
Right.
not through the first one.
Not through the first
No.
call
And
center.
I mean, I also do sales on my own too, so I've been self-taught.
Right,
So,
right.
you know, but coaching is very important, because if I can tell you this is how you get to A, B, C, they're not wondering where is D, because it's not even on the path. Don't worry
Right,
about that yet.
right,
Get to here
right.
first. But I think coaching is very important, because when people, a confused mind does nothing.
Hey, that's a great line, a
So,
confused mind, sure.
You know, if I take the time and I can coach, because now I'm on both ends, so now I know. So I'm like, okay, so all the people who I was frustrated with in my life, I was like, they taught me how not to be them. I always look at, like, what is this teaching me?
Right.
So it taught me how not to be them. So, okay, how would I be able to get a productive, you know, employee or salesperson or a
Right,
team
right.
member, right? So that's how I was able to coach, and that's how I do coach. And I never, you know, put somebody down. That's not how you...
And that's very important, because many times when I'm in a call center and working with management, I'll say, you know, you came up through the ranks. What did you know, remember what it was like when you were just a call center agent. You know, don't bombard people with the negativity, you know, you didn't do this, or you did this, or whatever.
They need to read the 1 Minute Manager.
A 1 Minute Manager, that
Yeah.
is a good book.
Yeah,
That
it's
is a
really
good-
great, and I think everybody should have a repertoire of books that they read before they manage somebody, because
True.
it's like it's almost like, you know, parents having a baby. They're infants, they're fragile, and then you keep beating on them. That they're gonna have low self-esteem, and you're ruining
Right.
the rest of their lives, not just their
Right.
work life.
Right.
You know.
It's true. And I find that, you know, coaching really, if done well, it corrects undesirable behavior, because it helps mold that person, molds that employee into being a better employee, and they become more engaged,
Yeah.
you know, and especially if you empower your agents to do things. Sounds like years ago they didn't think
They didn't really.
they really didn't. But you
Because
know
it
what?
was just a job.
It was a job.
That, you know, it
right.
was just a job. It was just money. It wasn't. Now I feel like everything's kind of shifted, where everybody's looking for that empowerment. Everybody's looking for that enlightenment. You know, like, you know, that's
Yeah.
how they're going towards. So if companies don't adjust with that, they're not going to do well, because
Right.
their employees are going to leave, because they're like, I don't want to feel like this.
Right, and that's what happens.
And that's why you have
especially-
turnover.
Yeah, call center, that's why it's a 50% turnover. That's kind of, you know, the most important factor that, and then it costs almost $3,500 to replace that
Yeah.
kind of an employee.
It's cheaper to attain them than to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, the most important thing is when you think like a customer. And a lot of companies forget that, you know, you have to, when you're introducing new things, you have to make sure that you think like a customer. So, you know, for angry customers, I generally teach, you know, sit up straight, listen to the caller, create a rapport, create the solution, follow through, and never take what a caller says.
That's huge.
Personally. And that truly is, you know, kind of a nice note to end on. You know, we did quite a few think-abouts. Let's remember that, you know, ask your customers what they want you to do. A lot of times we forget to do that. So I would just like to to thank Kat for coming in today and
you for having
talking
me. It was a pleasure.
about the life of a call center agent. And certainly to reach me, you can do that on Twitter at Laura Sikorski. And we also want to thank our videographer Samantha for doing such a great job this morning, and certainly Corinne Murphy-Caro, who is founder and CEO of Blue Chip Marketing, the Daily Blue and Blueprint magazine. And you could reach them at 631-761-9223. And with that, thank you so much for clicking in, and have a perfect day.